Welcome to the podcast of Wake Up Church. We've been asleep for too long. This is your host, Dr. Rosalind Best. Today's podcast is being brought to you by bestlegacyfoundation.org. Please visit the website for opportunities for scholarships, mentorships, and a chance to leave a lasting legacy. Today's podcast is entitled, We Have a Generational Gap. We've got to get it fixed. Oh, you're ready for this. You know, there is so much going on between us, the older generation, and the younger generation. You know, they call them Generation X, Generation Next. And it's unfortunate that there's such a huge gap between us. And we've got to find a way to bridge the gap between the youth and their elders. It's comfortable for everybody to point the finger at the police, point the finger at the schools, point your finger at the prisons. But may I suggest to you, the core problem is a lack of parenting using biblical principles. God made it easy for us to follow, but governments who are dictating and overriding the instructions in the Bible that are easy for us to follow. Think about this. We are not allowed to have Bibles anymore as a part of the curriculum in schools, even though in the beginning, the first schools had Bible as a curriculum. But they issue free Bibles in prison and in juvenile facilities. Think about this. The government says you cannot physically punish your child, but they beat them up physically in juvenile jail and prison facilities. Think about this. They don't allow prayer in schools, a moment of silence. But most support to incarcerated citizens is led by a faith-based organization, aka churches. I'm just saying, the system is backwards and dysfunctional on purpose. Let's examine some key scriptures to help us understand where the gap started and what we can do to rectify the problem before it's too late. Rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. If a child is not given perimeters of do's and don'ts, they will get the impression that life is a have it your way type of mentality. I remember when I rebelled against my mother and I opened up myself to demon possession. I was disobedient. I was going to do what I wanted to do, and I didn't care what she said because I thought she was old and she didn't have a right to tell me not to go into the scary house because all my friends were going in the scary house and I was going in the scary house. And I walked in there and I came out with something I couldn't shake and get rid of. Proverbs 22:15. Foolishness is bound up. It's bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. Let me encourage you, hit your kids exactly where it hurts. You heard me. Hit your kids exactly where it hurts. Where does it hurt? Take their cell phones. Don't allow them to have the cell phone for a few days. Take their allowance. If they act a fool, don't give them the money that they've been promised. Remove all electronic devices from their usage, from their bedroom, from the den, from the living room. That includes the TV, iPads, Xbox, tablets, laptops, video games. Remove them all. Shut them down. Remove their bedroom door from their room. If you suspect inappropriate behavior going on in their bedroom, they don't pay rent. They're living there scot-free at your expense. That's your door, that's your room that they are allowed to have. And you are allowed to remove that door if you want to hit your kids in the place where it hurts. I'm not talking about physical strikings and so forth. That would be anti-government. Hit them where it hurts. You take that cell phone for a few days, see who can't clean up their room without a cell phone. See who can't clean up that room and get things done like you said. See who can't talk to you with some respect. If you don't hit them where it hurts, your future is going to be hurt, and your heart is going to be hurt by what the government and other institutions can do, the correctional institution can do to your children. Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Major problem. Who's training the child? If grandmama trying to be a hoochie mama and a hot tamale, and she doesn't have any training, mama has no training. Mama is a thought, and she's doing what she wants to do. So who's training up a child in the way they should go? We wonder why children are wayward, they're distracted. You know who's raising our kids? Videos. Nicki Minaj. Megan Thee Stallion. Whatever the girl's name is, no disrespect. Videos, movies, music. They are giving the identity to the children. And it's not the best one. It's not the right one. Ephesians chapter 6 verse 4 says, fathers, don't provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Daddies, this is your job. This is not somebody else's job. Fathers, he says, don't provoke your children. That means you have the capability of provoking them, jugging and prodding them, annoying them. And that's not parenting. That's aggravating, irritating, and frustrating to a child. You taunt them. You throw their past mistakes in their face when God doesn't throw your past mistakes in your face. Oh, come on, somebody. It's easy to throw stones when you don't live in a glass house. But most of us live in glass houses. We need to throw parties, extend mercy, show love, and not judgment. The chapter in the book Titus, chapter 2, verse 7, it says, in all things showing thyself a pattern of good works. In doctrine, showing uncorruptness, gravity, and sincerity. Psalms 127:3 says, lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of thy womb is his reward. Children are your heritage. How are you treating what your heritage is? Are you protecting your heritage? Are you investing in your heritage? Are you properly rearing your heritage? Because it won't be a heritage if you don't do the things that God expects from you to do, to parent and properly guide them. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 24. He that spareth the rod hateth his son, but he that loveth his son chasteneth him betimes. Correction is not about a belt. It's about doing the things that hit your kids where it hurts. If your child like desserts and snacks, you take those things away. They can still eat. I'm not talking about starvation or deprivation. Take away the things that they value the most. That cell phone is a key. They would rather get a spanking than you take that cell phone. They'll have a fit if they can't play with a cell phone. Hit them where it hurts. Colossians chapter 3 verse 21 says, fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. I've seen fathers. My father was so cruel. Bless his heart. He didn't know how to properly parent. And so he would verbally assault and physically assault my brother, which was an attempt to make him be a man. At 4 years old, you can't be a man. You don't even have the mental capacity, but yet he would box him and punch him and aggravate him. And it brought discouragement because my brother was a toddler and he didn't deserve that. And so people that get mistreated, if they're not careful, they will mistreat their own children the same way, with their mouths, with their words, with their vices. It's not meant to discourage them. Don't make them angry. Don't push their buttons just because you can, just because you know that's a hot button. Come on, parents. We've got to be the example that we want them to be. You don't want them to push your buttons. Don't push their buttons. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 14. The rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself bringeth his mother to shame. And many of us see children that are doing things that their mother said, I didn't teach you to do that. Can we be honest and say maybe you didn't have time to teach them because you were working 2 jobs? And then you had a boyfriend, or, it's more to life than cooking and putting clothes on your children. What children want from you is you. Just 5 minutes of your time in the morning, 5 minutes of your time in the evening. Not you sitting up and watching love and hip hop and your soap operas and the things that give you a sense of satisfaction. Your children just want you. Proverbs 29:17, it says, correct thy son, and he shall give thee rest. Yea, he shall give delight to thy soul. If you correct him, what? That's what the Bible says. Correct your son and he will give you rest. So, mothers, single mothers that may be out there struggling and don't want to correct their sons, don't want to correct their children, because maybe the other spouse or the other parent is not in their lives. And so sometimes people can overcompensate for what they don't have. You don't need to overcompensate. You need to correct, and they'll give you rest. Correction is fixing the behavior that is inappropriate and can be detrimental. You don't have to fix it with a belt. If that works, you do what you feel you need to do. But punishments are powerful. Punishments are powerful weapons to correct behavior. Last verse, Proverbs 23:13, it says, withhold not correction from the child, for if thou beatest him with the rod, he shall not die. Now, withhold not correction. It also says in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 3, neither as being lords over God's heritage. Your children are your heritage. You're not to lord over them, but being examples to the flock. They want to see love. You need to be that example of love. They want to see kindness. You need to be that example of kindness. You correct them with a rod, an instrument that will change their behavior. What will change their behavior? That rod may be removing that phone. That rod may be taking away their bike. That rod may be taking out their television. Come on, parents, we've got to move with the times. The government says don't physically beat them, don't. But hit your kids where it hurts. Because it says when you correct your son, he shall give delight to your soul. If you chasten him, you're just loving on him. You're just showing him he can be loved. Please stay tuned next week for part 2, because this is the part for the adults. Next week, we're going to talk about the children. All the children. Loving the children. And making that connection so this gap is no longer a wedge between us. God loves you and I do too. Love on somebody for real.